episode of the Best Book Club. I'm your host, Nu Fatora, and this is the podcast where I discuss the best stories with the best minds in the community. On this episode, I'll be discussing Mairead's Misery by Tara. With me, I have JCCW. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
So for all the listeners, there's a real quick thing. I do apologize for the hoarseness of my voice. Just getting a little bit of a sickness, and this is kind of the last thing that's left from it. Tried all kinds of stuff, couldn't really make it work, so this is what I'm stuck with. So it's been a while since you've been on, and I'm glad to have you back.
Yeah, it feels nice to get back into the swing of things.
Yeah,
Like it's nice reading the story and it's nice taking notes on it and I'm just happy to talk about this again.
yeah, yeah, and it's nice to have. I love talking to Hans because I can do it all day long, but it is nice to have some variety.
Mhm. We all love the man, but even all of us need a break sometimes.
Oh, I could talk to him forever, but also being able to talk to other people in between when I talk to him is really nice. So,
Yep.
diving right into the story, it was first posted on November 6th, 2021 on Lucky Fetish, and it currently only has 980 views. This
Yeah, which is
it's a criminally unknown gem.
it's a
It's
yeah, I don't know how it has so little. Maybe as far as our knowledge goes, this was only posted on Lucky Fetish.
mhm.
So maybe there's just no cross reference. Like if this was posted to DA, maybe some people from over there would be able to go to Lucky Fetish and see more of it, or I don't know what it is, but that is such a low amount for what this offers.
Yeah, and it's it's wild, but at the same time, it sort of makes sense because you sort of have to keep in mind what time it came out. The tail end of 2021 when Lucky Fetish really was dead. Uh,
Yeah, basically.
yeah, there's there's a couple people who post on it from time to time, but I don't think we're ever gonna recover from it, from the PHP update or whatever it is. But that's beside the point. So this story is about a woman trying to mesh who she wants to be with who she thinks she is, gaining the understanding along the way that the two are mutually exclusive, much to her dismay. Do you think that pretty aptly surmises it?
Sort of.
Okay, so
I
how would.
saw this as a woman who thinks she's more than what she thinks she is and sort of gets put in her place.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
guess I guess it could be sort of two. It could be sort of two,
Yeah.
like both of those things.
Yeah, and the way you described it just now sounds pretty
Mhm.
similar to the way that I described it. So I don't think we're too far off in our viewpoints in this story, at least
Yeah.
in how we took it in. So way back, about last year or so now, JCCW and I did a recording for this story, and my computer, like multiple in a row, shit the bed. So I'm really wondering if your thoughts have changed at all. And it kind of makes me think about the way things play out, like how much of it is for a reason or for none at all.
I think some of my thoughts have uh, grown different, and my positive feelings in some areas have stayed the exact same. Where this is one story that I think is required for any upcoming fetish writers, but there's some sour stuff in here that has just grown even more, and I feel like that's probably going to be the thing I talk about the most
Okay.
is is that.
Yeah, and I'm very excited to hear all of it. It's interesting to me that then it sounds like in both directions, um, your opinions and views on it have strengthened, which is
Yeah.
it's very interesting to me. So I absolutely love what the title does here. I see it as perfectly blending the classic sort of quote unquote get it out of the way. We all know why we're here. With the modern, there's a little more going on under the surface. You know, a little intrigue, a little mystique, you know, an actual hook before the hook. And I don't think
I
that's
think
something that
the
happens very much.
I think what probably emphasizes that is the word misery is the we know what this story is about, we're ready for it. But the May read part is very emblematic of what a lot of modern stories are, where it's the name of the character and then it's their story.
Yeah,
Which
and there's not even the word
and
wedgie
that's
in the
always
title.
been a lot. Yeah, like Lucy and Daniela is a huge
Hmm.
example where it's like a very simple title, but it holds a lot more under it. It's
Yeah.
stuff, and that's very emblematic of modern stories.
Hmm. Absolutely. And it's kind of funny how the, as you said, like, as you called it, like sort of the simplest titles oftentimes end up being the ones that stick with us. And it seems like most of the time it tends to be these two-word titles or titles that have two main words. And that's kind of my way of still being able to fit in Lucy and Daniela. But in
Luke,
this,
Luke, luckily unlucky.
Sword
Two
Winner.
worlds, friend sessions. I don't think we could count YWNR.
No, because that's an acronym, and none of us actually knows what
Yeah,
it stands for.
yeah,
So
but that's a but it that's an that those are a lot of other examples where hey, two words sell.
yeah, it's
Like
very
they get people intrigued.
yeah very
It clicks you right in and tells you everything you need to know.
exactly. It's very simple and it's right to the point. But there's so much of the time it ends up being that it, despite it on the surface level being so simple, once you've gotten through the story, you realize just how well that simplicity has captured the essence of it. And
Yep.
it seems like in this community, uh, titles like that immediately strike something in people, whether that's an emotional response, and even better, not whatever it is, it sticks with them. And you brought up multiple great examples, luckily unlucky, and I have a couple of ones to add on as well. Sore Winner, Blood Money, Lucy and Daniela, Two Worlds, Friend Sessions, College Days, even my own first story, Fortunate Events. And
Yep.
I think it comes down to those titles saying so much with so little, and we as human beings absolutely adore that, especially in movies and acting and that kind of thing. Doing so much with so little, for some reason we fall in love with it every time.
I'll fully agree with that. Like, there's just something about two word titles that just work.
Yeah,
Like, even in the mainstream, Harry Potter, Percy Jackson, Hunger Games, it
yeah.
always works.
Well, I mean, technically that last one is the Hunger Games, but yeah,
Okay. Okay.
but yeah, it's weird how it works. Um, So I'm curious then, what purpose do you think a title has in not just wedgie literature, but in all of writing? And do you think that purpose changes depending on the type of writing?
um, I think the purpose is to sell the book because
Very
no
true.
matter what people say, don't judge a book by its cover. That is what everybody does. It is unavoidable, and we have to acknowledge that people do this. So you would have to sell your story. And two letters, it's really easy to read, and it tells the person exactly what you're getting, like right out the gate. Like you hear Harry Potter, and you're like, ah, is the wizard. I know
Hmm.
that. I
Yeah,
know what I'm getting out of this.
yeah,
It's just stuff like that. Like it works. Fortune, like fortunate events. I know what's going on in there. It's a fortunate story, full of fun wedgies. But um, but like friend sessions. I know it's a bunch of friends with wedgies.
exactly.
But like that's the point. It's like it's meant to be easily identifiable, and
Hmm.
an easily identifiable story just makes stuff work. It's why a whole bunch of like you like titles with you in it are very successful on DA because it draws immediately to the person what they're going to like about them, what they want in the story. It's there in a point of view where they get to indulge themselves in a fetish, and it
Oh,
always works. It's always popular.
yep.
It's always good. If you want a big example of that, Reptile 111 it has put out 200 favorite stories, and he's been pumping them out constantly. It's rare to see
Jesus
a story not get
Christ.
over 100 favorites,
That's
and it's
insane.
been a lot of you stuff. It's crazy,
Yeah. Well, I
but
mean,
it works.
really, the best example that any of us can give is "You Give a Girl a Wedgie" by Our Time.
Yeah, 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 that's very fair. That is Oh, that tells you everything you need to do. That would be
Exactly.
what I'd probably. That's what I'd probably answer as the second question you asked, where it's like, where does it change? It changes in just style of like second person point of view stories need that awesome title of you do something fetish related,
Hmm.
essentially.
Yeah.
Like that, and that title works. A two letter or not two letter a 2 word title for a second point of view story probably wouldn't do as well for the story's benefit.
Yeah.
Um, it would probably be a good title if you came up with the right 2 words, but it probably wouldn't fit the story as well as the U format we've been so accustomed to.
Yeah. So the term to describe what I'm about to say is slipping my mind, but I think you'll know what I'm talking about as I describe it. Um, where there's like keywords that you can use to really grab a person's attention, and in this community, two of the biggest words are "you" and "wedgie." So, a 2 word title right
Yeah,
there is "you wedgie."
you you wish
Yeah.
you wish that title would sell just as easily, but like I think they people want a little more. I think it's like I think you could probably shorten it to "you wedgie a girl."
Yeah.
Like that would be the shortest, sweetest title for a story like that.
But at the same
But
time,
like
it doesn't sound nearly as good as you give a girl a wedgie.
right, Magni had a whole bunch of stories like that where it's like you give your girlfriend a wedgie
Hmm.
and stuff like that, and it always worked.
Yeah.
It was always well done.
Yes. Yeah.
But and plus, it always got the favorites. Like those stories got him like 2 to 300.
Hmm.
I
Which
get
is,
some good shit.
yeah, those are sort of the money stories, if you will.
Yeah,
Uh,
basically. I know the like even when I do certain titles like teacher like my recent teacher one
Teacher dominated by wedgies.
yeah, teacher dominated by wedgies. Um that one I included AU story in there, and that little parentheses that still works wonders. And it tells them that okay, yeah, this needed a different title, but it's still a second point of perspective story, so I'm still gonna like it. And
Yeah.
people do, as it's got 294 favorites.
Yeah. As far as I can recall, it's one of your most favorited
It is
stories.
my most favorited.
Okay. I'll,
Yeah,
uh,
it's my most favorited thing that isn't art.
okay. So jumping back a little bit, I wanted to touch on a point that you brought up of the you sort of know what you're getting into when you see these titles, but there are multiple that tend to be pretty deceptive and misleading in some senses. Like Blood Money is probably not the best example, but you kind of have to look more
I
into
mean,
the story to figure it out. And
just
that
hearing that from the outset when you're looking for fetish stuff, it makes it seem like some creepy shit.
and it kind of is in some ways, but like Friend Sessions, Two Worlds, and I honestly, what I believe, Fortunate Events. That's it. I think those titles are very deceptive. Um, they sort of show one thing, and that aspect does show up, but then for the it sort of either for the most part is something much more sinister or um, something lurking beneath the surface, especially in friend sessions, or it sort of takes a you sort of have to go through the entire story. At least I hope, in order to fully understand why the title is what it is. And so I'm talking about my own story, Fortunate Events. That's what I'm hoping uh, happens. That was sort of my intention with it. But the I guess is there anything else you would like to discuss on titles?
Um, I'd probably add on that I think YWNR is a pretty misleading title because you try and connect the words in any way to wedging, and it's like all the farthest you get is you wedgie, and
Yeah,
that's as best as you could probably get, and it's like I would not be able to tell this is a fetish story, and yet it's one of the longest running. It is one of the biggest wedgie stories in the community.
yeah, yeah. It's absolutely has one of the most tangible legacies to follow. It's and really the two word title is such a grabber, and yet there are these sort of outlier titles that really are just kind of doing their own thing, like YWNR. There is really, I can't think of another title that's even close to similar to it. It's so different, and I feel like there's a lot of power there, um, where like you're setting your story apart from the very beginning.
Hmm.
All right, very nice. So now going into the opening, it's so interesting to me in that it paints such a clear picture of who Mairead wants us to think she is. And so here's a quote from the story. She wasn't always the most popular woman in the room, but she knew she wasn't doing what she did for clicks, but for getting out what needed to be out. And from
A
that,
very big, like, a lot of self importance there.
yes, yeah, from that,
Mhm.
and then from everything else around it in that intro, I can clearly see someone who thinks very highly of themselves, probably to the point of arrogance, in to a small degree. They see their opinion as super important and necessary for others to hear, and it sort of makes me wonder who the real person is behind this front we're being fed, and we do find out some of that later on, for better or worse.
Yeah, like the it's a it's a lot of like, and there's also a lot of I should mention there's a ton of faux humbleness going
Yeah,
on. Right,
absolutely.
like being 27 meant she was no spring chicken, but the
Hmm.
way she saw it, she was still in the prime of her life to get going and make a name. Like there's a lot of like in her mind is like she's trying to like put herself down, but she knows that she's like higher status than she is, or at
Yeah.
least she's trying to present herself as higher status than she is.
Hmm. Yeah, and it is kind of interesting that that I guess honestly, I guess if you go back through all the podcast episodes I've ever done, I feel like interesting would be the word I use the most. But um, looking at in real life how so much of the time who you want to become, so much of it starts with you thinking that about yourself, even if you don't truly believe it or you're telling yourself that, and then slowly through that repetition and that sort of building of brain signals, I suppose, in your brain, um, it kind of manifests itself into reality.
Yeah, and it manifests for her. Oh, it manifests for her.
Who she really is what really manifests. And I think Mairead butting in where she wasn't welcome in the first part fits perfectly in line with this characterization of her actually being very arrogant and very cocky about her skills or whatever she does online, um, but not actually having all everything that she not I guess not being everything that she says she is.
I can agree on that. Um, I think I want to point out the something that I really love about this story that has not changed since I initially read it back then is I just love the descriptions.
Yeah,
This person writes descriptions so damn well. Wearing
yeah,
a simple, tight but tasteful black dress along with knee-high black boots.
yeah.
That's so good. That is
Hmm.
so good. It's it's descriptive. It's highly descriptive in the places that it needs to be, and it skirts by everything else, but still giving you a clear picture of what it needs to be. It's perfect pacing. It's
Yeah,
so good,
yeah,
and that's
and
something that I've like. I think that's something I praised the last time we talked about this was just how
mm,
good the descriptions were,
yeah,
and that's why I think this story needs to be seen more. Is because more writers need to see how to describe stuff like this.
and I think something that I absolutely agree with you on that, and I think something that even elevates it further is the fact that it's not just Tara stopping the story and posing Mairead in front of a mirror or whatever it is, as the cliche goes, and describing her from head to toe. It's she's only Tara's only describing what is then used in the action, and that is something that so many people I feel like are aware of. They should be doing, but don't necessarily follow it all the time.
Yeah, like a lot of people will describe like clothes on the person, but it won't actually come into effect later. Um, for me, what I try to do is I try to see like what like pants I want the person to wear, so that if I have them wearing jeans, I can get say like they dug into the rough denim
Mhm.
or something like that, where it's like you want it to mean something. And for
Uh,
this, the tight black dress, eventually when they get to the wedgie and they have to like pull up the dress, you can feel how tight it is because it was described like that earlier.
exactly. Yeah, it really comes down to that the idea of Chekhov's gun. Um, for anybody who doesn't know, it's a narrative principle that states that every element in a story must be necessary and irrelevant elements must should be removed. Um, so basically, in a nutshell, if a writer features a gun in a story, um, there
That
has to
gun
be a
better be
reason
fired.
for it, and so there has to be a reason for it. It doesn't necessarily have to be fired, but that's kind of the usual way to go with it. But there has to be a reason for it. It has to be used for something. It has to be part of the action, and that is exactly what Tara does. I think that is one of the very first things that sets them apart from so many other writers. And it's kind of funny that you brought up things that you love about the story, and because there's really there's a lot I love in this story, and I don't think about
Mhm.
just how much I actually really enjoy it until I'm reading through it. So you'll keep hearing
And
me
like
say,
talking about it again.
yeah. So you'll keep hearing me say like I love this or I love that, but I love how Tara features a 27-year-old as the protagonist, and that it's her going about her job and not school. That
Yeah,
is
can I just point that out? That was
absolutely,
something else that I noted that I really love. 27,
yeah.
so rare in fetish stories. Like usually it's around the 18 to 21 age range,
Hmm.
but here we have a working class woman who's nearing her 30s. It's refreshing.
Yes.
Like the only time we get like an older woman in in a wedgie fetish story is when she's a mom. And I mean, there's places for that, but when you that's the only one you see, it gets stale. So seeing this, it's hella refreshing. Like
Absolutely.
it's so nice to see. It's so like maybe it's just because I'm growing older, and this age range is starting to be like what like seems sexy to me. But I like it. I can't help it. I like it a
Hmm.
lot.
Yeah. I do want to disagree. I can't agree with the moms and wedgie stories getting old. I don't think it'll ever get old for me because I love MILFs. But uh,
Fair
it
enough. Fair enough.
it's so
For me,
nice.
I like seeing more like variety in the character of a mom
Yes, exactly.
because a
Yeah.
lot of the time it's the same like mom and son get into wedgies like the Jake and Gwen, but
And then
I want to see
the
more
inheritance.
variety in that.
Yeah,
Like
And
I want to like maybe like the husband and wife,
mm-hmm.
which I've done, but I want to see more of.
Yeah, and that really is the key to it is what you want to see more of. That's what you should be making. You should be creating the content that you want to consume. Like older women is definitely something that I feel is lacking in the community. Like women in their 30s and 40s, cougars and milfs are super hot, and I believe our community is starting to see that. I think as you just kind of confirmed it, so for anyone listening, please, please, please make that a trend and a mainstay. It doesn't just have to be an 18 to 21-year-old in high school or college. There are an infinite amount of ways we can take things, and it is astounding how much we've done with the little we've worked with. But it's not just the refreshing lemonades of the community who can do this. Everybody can, and I think the tastes as the community collectively is growing up are changing.
Yeah, it's nice to, and it would be nice to see like sort of a shift in like main characters in a story to fit that changing demographic.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I guess I'm kind of guilty of it myself a little bit, but I have excuses in my head for that. So,
Yeah,
but I've got plans on the way for things. Yeah, it's really something to marvel at how fast Mairead's naivety on the way of the world comes crashing down.
yeah,
She's clearly so set up in this digital world where she thinks everyone knows her and she's everything and whatever. And then some random guy who doesn't give a fuck about her and frankly doesn't know or care who she is shows her how the world actually works in the universe of the story. And Tara really
yeah.
does it beautifully, in my opinion, of making the sequence of events a
And
natural progression. Not just in terms of
and
it's a
this is
good
where
wedgie,
I'll
but also in the way it's impacting Mairead and affecting her.
and this is where I'll disagree slightly. I think that it could be a little better.
Really?
It
Okay.
mainly in dialogue, because I think that this is the weakest part of the story. Is the dialogue? I think that it is very cringy on Mayread's side, which could be intentional, but even intentionally, I like to enjoy my dialogue, and it feels like she's trying too hard to be funny.
Really?
Like the hey, what do you think you're doing? Bullying? What is this? A PSA from the 90s? Like, come on, man. Like that could be like I don't know. That feels too Marvel quippy, and like not intentionally so.
Yeah.
It feels like a dumb joke thrown in, and just I feel like it could be better. I really
Interesting.
feel like it could be better on for Mayread especially.
Wow. That's crazy because I feel the exact opposite. I thought almost entirely that the dialogue felt very naturalistic to the characters. It might not be the most naturalistic to this world that we you and I live in, but it felt like those characters wouldn't actually speak like that if they were real people. And I think you can be a little lighter on Terra since it is their first story. Uh,
I mean, fair enough, but criticism is criticism, and even in the
absolutely.
first one, you got to know you got to know where your strengths are and where they
Yes.
can be improved on, or where stuff can be improved on. And spoiler alert for when we get to part two, I think the dialogue is better in that one. I think it improves a
Wow.
lot.
Yeah. We'll get to part two later down the line. Um,
Yeah, of course. There's some stuff I gotta say about that one too, but I think the dialogue is better at
okay.
least.
Interesting.
Um,
Oh,
yeah, like I think Mayread has got some like pretty decent lines.
hmm.
Like the "I'm only 27."
Yeah.
I think that line was pretty funny. Um, but eh, like
Huh.
it does feel a lot like a. I think this is something we brought up last time we talked about it. This feels like a classic wedgie story,
Yeah. That was
and
kind of the whole thing that had us start talking about it was my
this one of the
assertion
classics.
my assertion that it was the a perfect blending of the classic and the modern.
Yeah, and man, do I wish like I just want some of I just think I just wanted some of this dialogue to be a little more subtle in
Okay,
its approach
I can see that.
because because when Mairead is aggressive, she's not subtle at all.
Hmm.
Which if it was consistent that whole way, it would be fine. But she actually has some pretty good lines of dialogue where it is subtle. So it's like
Hmm.
I'd rather have a whole bunch of unsubtle moments than a mixture between the both. Between the two.
Really, you don't want
Yeah.
to see a character go through different emotions and thought
No,
processes?
it's inconsistency on emotions.
Okay.
Um it's like the if I had to give an example of what I'm exactly talking about, um it's the I'm not going to write something about this because I'm not going to bring attention to it, but if this is the sort of ish and then it cuts off when,
Hmm.
wedgie happens.
Yeah.
But like I think that that's subtle. I think that that's a
Okay.
subtle like she thinks so highly of herself that this would be something she's writing about, but she's
Yeah.
choosing not to. She's choosing to take a stand because she's an integral journalist, except that she's totally not. It's just she doesn't want to
Yeah.
write about this because it's embarrassing.
Exactly.
But I think that that's subtle. When it's stuff like what I mentioned earlier, what is this PSA from the '90s? That's not subtle at all for like how she thinks, and I really wish it was better than that.
Okay.
Like, or at least when it comes to the dialogue, showing off her character, I want it to be better.
Okay. And the way you described it with using the word subtle, that it does ring true to me. I can definitely see that. But I guess this is
Yeah, I think,
probably the
yeah,
story that I will go that I'm okay with it being more direct than indirect. It's This is the only story I can think of where I actually really enjoy it because it is pretty direct, and I feel like the stuttering and stumbling and that kind of thing I think it's a lot better than a lot of people do.
Yeah, I think the stuttering part is actually pretty good, honestly.
Yeah.
Like I think that like it's the carrot. I'm only 27. Like that's such good use of stutter.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's good use of stutter for a joke.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like this,
It
that's something I actually want to bring up of something that I really like. The
uh
grammar is really like when it like there's a whole like sorry for a bunch of new writers out there, but some of you new writers really suck with grammar. And just to be fair here, when I started out, I also sucked with grammar. I really sucked with grammar.
Mm-hmm.
But this is a really good. But this grammar is really nice,
Oh.
and getting that he was new when he wrote it. Congratulations! Like this is really good. This is really good grammar. Please keep it up.
Hmm.
And
It's
he
a,
does keep it up.
it's actually kind of funny. I feel the opposite on that. Not to a crazy degree, but I feel like it definitely could have used a a a, a run through of editing. Um,
There are definitely some misspelled words.
well,
Definitely.
I'm talking also grammatically, like specific like word choices.
Ah,
Yeah. And oh man, the thing I was gonna say
I was
completely slipped my
I was
mind.
mainly thinking of like comma use is really good
Okay.
in this story,
Yeah, that is true. That is very true. Um,
which is something that people even experienced writers struggle on all the time. So it's nice seeing that someone's got like they know what they're doing here.
yeah. And I wonder if that could be an indication that Tara, prior to writing their first story for the community, had a background in writing. Like it was the same way with me. I was writing for years and years before I had written anything for this community, and so my grammar has always been very good. Like I didn't start out really terribly. Like I think a lot of people do because that's how you learn by just doing it. Um, so I wonder if Tara does have a background. Wow, my voice is
Yeah, I
really.
think he definitely.
It's so with the wedgie, the first wedgie. Um, it's I feel like I guess I'll reiterate what I said. I think Tara really does it beautifully. Like
Oh,
she
so good.
with,
So good.
but it's
Oh, it's so good.
not just the wedgie itself, and not just that it's a good wedgie, but also in the way it's impacting her and affecting her. She's not a completely different person because of it. She's still trying to hold on to the idea of who she wants to be and who she thinks she is. But now, after this wedgie, she understands, even if she doesn't really want to admit it to her, even to herself, that who she thinks she is doesn't really jive with who she actually is.
Yeah, it's a very like when you reread this with that sort of mindset, you can see how different like every single like humiliation scene really is, and you could just see the almost breakdown of Mairead's pride,
Absolutely.
and it's so good.
Yeah.
It's so good,
Mm-hmm.
and man, I cannot reiterate like all of the descriptions. Oh, all of the wedgie scenes, dude, all of them.
Yeah.
Oh, they're so good.
Uh,
They they convey it the movement so well.
Yeah.
Like in every sense, how like how the underwear moves up, how it feels to Mayread, um, the sort of like grunting, like uncomfortable nature of the whole situation is conveyed so well in every single one, and it's so good. Love it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's only one nitpick I have, and it's that I don't really know what her underwear looks like. There's
Mm.
flowers on it, and that's all I get. And I kind of wish I had more, but that's just me. That's
Yeah.
what I look for in a
Yeah.
fan.
Honestly, it was. I felt like it was just enough that I guess it would have been nice to have the underwear fully described, but I feel like it kind of fell in line with the rest of the descriptions, where they weren't, as you said, as you outlined, they weren't comprehensive and definitive. They weren't going through every single detail. It just gave you some details, and then you were able to fill in the rest. So I'm
Yeah,
pretty alright with it.
yeah. Like it's almost like the like this writer, like the underwear for him isn't all that special. However, the actual motion of the wedgie is integral for him,
Yeah,
and that comes out in the writing.
absolutely. And I love how you're really focusing on the indirect detail. It sounds like that's what is really drawing you in, and that's where you're getting the most enjoyment out of it. And oh, I love I love to hear it as the most vocal proponent for indirect detail in this community. I love to hear that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, one thing I really want to bring up because this was really like this really got to me when I reread this. This is something that like I initially said I disliked, but I'm like wondering if like maybe it was intentional, and if
Mm.
it's intentional, I kind of like this intentionality a little bit more. Um, the whole thing of her being Irish Catholic,
What about
like
it?
she likes to like this gets mentioned a lot, at least more than it just in the intro, which
That's true.
it's it flat out says that she's Irish Catholic, so it's not subtle at all. And she mentions it constantly, like I'm an Irish Catholic.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if this is intentional to the character of like she like wants to push herself up as like a higher figure, that like hey she's religious so she's moral, but like she's clearly like it really doesn't mean much to her, like it clearly doesn't mean anything to her.
Mm-hmm.
um and like it would mean that like I don't know, it gets mentioned all the time, so like and the fact that like maybe this fits with the rest of her character in the sense that she's just more fake than she's like telling herself that she is.
Hmm.
But like I don't know why this, but like I kind of wish there was more payoff on that. As
Interesting.
somebody who puts like light religious references in his stories,
I like subtlety in like descriptions that also lead to subtle actions from the character.
Mm-hmm.
So like a character who like has one little description that shows that he is religious does stuff that his religion actually says he should do. And it's light, it's subtle, and it works. But
Yeah.
for this one, there's not a really big payoff on that. And that
Hmm.
gets to me a lot because of what I said.
Interesting.
So like and I think one of the things I think one of the lines that I pointed out was wasn't very Irish Catholic of her.
Mm. Yeah.
And this was when she was gonna swear from the pain of a wedgie. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I don't know, maybe there could have been so many better ways to say it. They already set up that she's Irish Catholic. Could have maybe said that like she held her tongue as a million swear words almost escaped out
Yeah.
or something like that.
Hmm.
Like it could have been a little bit more subtle on that.
Interesting. I
Yeah.
actually didn't think about that until you just brought it up. Until you just brought it up, but I think I have a theory about how about it. I guess. Um, so you have all of these things about Mairead that she's giving to the readers, and she's sort of thinking about herself that end up not actually being true at all. And so I kind of think that the Irish Catholic and the fact that it's constantly brought up over and over, I wonder if that is Tara's way of sort of showing the through line of Mary's character being broken down, like her pride being broken down, as you said, and that's sort of the single legitimate truth that she's said that she's holding on to because she's losing everything else that she thought she was.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting theory. Um, it's a it could probably be like this. It's probably the giving the author the benefit of the doubt theory, which I think is fair enough. Especially for a new writer.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think I'll still stand by like I wish it had a better payoff
Mm-hmm.
in the story itself.
Okay.
But
Okay.
like especially because I'm open to the idea. I kind of like it, especially because Irish Catholicism is prime
Mm-hmm.
to be like abused like this.
Yeah.
I'm a Catholic.
Yeah.
Okay, so do you go to mass? Uh, yeah.
You know that
Like
is
it's it.
that is actually a really good point. That there there's there's a there could absolutely be a lot of untapped ground and area to cover by going into the church.
Yeah,
I think you'd have to handle it properly, but there's plenty of writers who are I feel qualified to do it.
yeah.
So that
It's
was
very untapped potential.
good
If you
observation.
have a good if that strikes a chord with anybody listening to this, try it out. Let's
Yeah,
see if it let's start it.
yeah, that great observation. I'm really glad you pointed that out because I know I've in the past I've asked people um, where they see the community can grow and expand into. That's a perfect place for it to go. Like it, Catholic guilt, and you marry it with wedgies. That is a perfect idea. I don't know
Hmm.
how anybody hasn't what's the word capital. I don't know how anybody hasn't capitalized on that idea yet.
Hmm.
Oh, I hope my voice is really not that bad as it sounds to me. I am very sorry if it is.
Hey, it's fine, man. Just keep drinking your water.
Yeah.
Um, while you do, I'm curious what you think of the mom coming in because I love the sister coming in
Mm.
as sort of like the mastermind behind the wedgies. Like that is and her like taking over while the brother who initially wedgied the girl is now holding her arms while the sister takes over and performs an even more extreme wedgie. I think it's great. I love it. Like the story could have ended after the sister gave the wedgie, and it would have been perfectly fine for me. But then the mom comes in, and I don't like it.
Interesting. So,
Like I know your thing with milfs, but the fact that it's just a spanking from the mom, and it's telling off a. This is where like I think Mairead's suffering gets a little too much.
hmm,
Where I'm like, now she just straight up doesn't deserve it
interesting.
because she wasn't wasn't hurting the bullies at all.
Hmm.
She didn't even talk to them, and she's getting punished for it. And it hurts me because I always hated that plot line in book stories that I read where it's like the bully bullies, and then the bully complains to the teacher, and the person getting bullied got in trouble for it. I always hated that plot line. First off, it was done everywhere, and second off, it just wasn't fair. So yeah.
With that that plot line that you're just describing, it is true to real life. The ref always sees this. Only ever sees the second hit, not the never only ever sees the retaliation. They never see the first contact. So it is
And
true
there
to
wasn't
life.
even retaliation from Mairead.
No, I mean the smallest little bit.
Yeah,
But
like
there is actually I
there was
wanna,
retaliation when she tried to tell off the brother, but then after the atomic wedgie, she didn't try to like tell off the kids and be like, "Oh, you're gonna get it. I'm gonna talk to the police" or something like that. Like there wasn't even anything like that could have prompted the mom.
Mhm. Well, so actually there's a couple things before we get to even the mom coming in that I wanted to break down a little further. This is a lot of fun seeing what the things that we focused on.
Yeah,
So going back a little bit, it something that I think is so uncommon in this community, and just yet another thing that I absolutely love about this story is Tara's laser focus on the actual impact that things have, how they affect Mary and change her. Uh, you can think of it sort of in the similar vein as like things not really having consequences in wedgie literature. That's a pretty big trope, and I feel like this is also there as well, not focusing on how the things that these characters experience impact them and change them. I think it's so easy to just get off and not think, and that is what probably a majority of the people in this community do. Yet, what I'm starting to see, thankfully, is the legitimately amazing characterization that we've had for at least 11 years now, and it's now being coupled with how the events we throw at our characters are impacting and affecting them. I just think it's wonderful to see. I think it's a very clear indication of that it might not be very obvious, but is a very clear indication that there is that from when Lucky Fetish first started in 2011 to 2021, 10 years later, there has been an evolution in how fiction is written in this community.
yeah. I can I can sort of get behind that. I think um I think the idea of consequences was something that I was thinking about when I was taking notes on the story. Um I was sort of like trying to like if this was part of the mom thing where it's like I was trying to find the consequences of all this, and it's all in how May represents herself and like her words in it.
Yeah.
And I sort of like how the consequences are almost told in the wedgie itself, and more since whenever he describes the pain of it.
Mm.
Like here, let me find a really good one.
Mm.
Um
Yeah.
the discussion was not something Mayread cared to have to hear,
Mm.
as she forced to waddle around, cotton burning as hot in her throat as the humiliation was in her head.
Yeah. Yeah.
I kind of
I really like
like that.
that.
I think that's good shit.
Yeah. It's like it's clever. Honestly, that's how I can describe it. Um,
Yeah, I'd call it
shit.
clever.
There was a damn it. I think this is the second thought that for this podcast that I've lost. But something you said. I whatever. I'll just move on to the next thing. Um,
Mhm.
so I'm getting close to the mom, but there's a couple more things. So one thing that I don't particularly care for is Mairead's immediate thought process on getting the wedgie. It read like Tara knew people want to read about the character experiencing the wedgie from every angle, but didn't really understand why that's important. And I really do like what Tara was trying to go for. I just don't think it quite stuck the landing.
Like what exactly? Like where? Like what sort of reaction was it?
So I'm going through it. It'll probably take me a little bit to find exactly where it is. Let's see. So it's the first wedgie. So okay, here we go. So there was just the way that Tara wrote it. Um, I guess I'll read this passage. That maybe that'll brings a little bit of what I'm saying to light. So this is directly when I guess it's directly when the wedgie is starting to happen, and directly before is that Irish Catholic thing that you pointed out. So Lord, with his tugging, the boy had managed to bring the level of the wedgie up a full decibel or so, which that right there, to interrupt the passage that I'm reading, that doesn't really make sense to me. That little phrase,
Yeah,
but that's just a
yeah,
little
it doesn't.
nitpick. And so, continuing with the passage, her panties stretched near to her neck as he snickered, painfully pinched her hip, and let her undies humiliatingly snap back to her ass, taking a step back to laugh at the near 30-year-old, reduced to the prank of a high schooler. So I guess it was the kind of the area that you talked about, but it's it I, I guess the thing I'm trying to get across is, I guess, a trend and a trope very common in this community and in the fiction, I guess, arena that we have. I guess it's one that centers around characters. Like, if you were to actually picture what was going on while this wedgie's happening, you would just see a frozen Mairead doing absolutely nothing. There were no reactions from her whatsoever, while this guy who she doesn't know at all is giving her a insane wedgie, and yet we get no reaction from her. That makes no sense. Like, all of this stuff is happening to her. She's the guy's. Okay, I closed out of it, but whatever. She's getting this really crazy wedgie, and yet we don't hear any reaction from her until the wedgie's done.
Mm,
That's kind of what I'm trying to
not
say with
it's
it.
quote. First, she cringed at the feeling of her own underwear invading her ass, and then she cringed again as she realized the cool breeze against her hips meant that her dress was in fact currently more like a corset than anything else. Her lower lip quivered as her eyes felt like they were dilating. She knew she wasn't supposed to go up on her toes in these boots, as she could tell from the sounds they made when she did, but she had no choice but to waddle and desperately attempt to make sense of what was happening.
Yes,
I think I
that
think
is
it
the
would have been
passage.
nice for her to realize it was happening
Mm.
before it ended, but
Yeah, that was the passage I was trying to find, and even hearing you read it out loud as opposed to just reading it myself, it just sounds like Tara went down a checklist of, like, okay, I'm hitting this spot, and then I'm hitting this spot, and I'm hitting this spot, but it didn't. I didn't get anything out of it. There was nothing to engage with or anything. It was just going through. Okay, this body part is reacting this way, and then this body part, but there wasn't any humanity in it.
hmm,
Maybe that's just me, but it's something that I have picked
eh,
up on in
you
the
were
community.
like if you notice trends in the community, you notice trends in the community with stuff like this, and
Yep.
I think I'm probably guilty of doing this sort of thing too. But I connected to it,
Mhm.
because like just some stuff just works
Mhm.
when conveying emotion for me.
Okay.
Like
Okay.
the lower lip quivering and eyes feeling like they were dilating. Like
Hmm.
gives me a perfect like visual feel of what's going on.
Yeah. I get. Bless you. I guess the thing that's missing for me is any sort of distinction from any other woman who's ever been wedgied in any single wedgie story in this community. Mayread
Yeah,
feels
I'll
like a
agree with
very
that.
different.
I think Mairead needs a individual reaction.
Yes, it feels like almost like it was copy. It was lifted from a different story. I'm sure it wasn't. I'm sure it is original, but it feels like Mayread stepped out of the story for a second, and then just the generic wedgie girl that seems to plague so many stories steps in to react for us.
Yeah, that's a very interesting take because I didn't even notice that.
Yeah, and
But this is why having different perspectives is really good because you notice stuff you never even thought you noticed. But yeah, I probably agree with you on that one.
mhm,
That sounds very like it's something that could definitely be improved on in a
absolutely.
future installment.
I think it should be something that's entirely taken out of stories forever. Your characters should. Why is it that when they're suddenly
I
getting
think
why
I think
why
we
is
I think some genericness is necessary in order to make something whole. Like you always need filling for your pie. You can't just have the unique crust.
true?
But you need to still have that unique crust in order to make it special. And I think um I think this general like body part description stuff is is good if it can also be held up by an individualistic reaction.
Hmm.
Like for example, with my Hana and Sarah story, there's a lot of like it's hard making reactions for each individual wedgie, but to make Hana a little bit more individualistic, I have some of that fluff, like some of that description fluff, but I also include her individual reaction of her holding her arm
Mm.
because it's just something she does whenever she feels tense about a situation.
Hmm.
So, and which gives her individualistic personality.
Yeah. Okay. And before you go too much further, I guess we're a little past it, so it might be a little late now. But I wanted to make a joke, like, and the best number for the amount of perspectives is three. Yeah.
Thank you
Uh,
very much.
of course, of course. Um, yeah. I just don't understand why so much of the time all of the wonderful characterization that writers are able to put into their stories flies out the window as soon as they get their underwear yanked. It just automatically brings me back to that 2011 2012 style of fan fiction where and it's still the case today unfortunately, but where every single character who gets a wedgie is just automatically devolves into a squealing nerd and there's nothing unique about them whatsoever. It's annoying.
You could call it.
Yeah. And I'm glad
I
that
think that's a fair. I think that's a very fair criticism. As I
mm,
say, I think that fluff has a purpose, but as long as you have individual character moments, it's good because as I reread it, in these moments doesn't really have a ton of character stuff for her. Or at least in certain in paragraphs where it's describing just the wedgie, she doesn't really have much. Like she has the Mayread, like it's Mayread swallowed as the boy gave a second equally strong tug that got a yelp from the woman. You
mm,
could apply that. You could swap out the name Mayread for any other character, and it would be the exact same, and it would not change a thing.
mm,
Like you could maybe say that like the prior descriptions of Mayread like is what bolsters it, but I think that it needs to happen in the moment in order for it to
exactly.
stick.
That's exactly what I'm saying as well. I'm glad we're on the same page with that. Um,
Hmm.
it, yeah. No, there goes another thought. Oh well.
Hmm.
Um, so as we kind of went back and forth on a little bit, I think while not perfect, the dialogue, in my opinion, is very human and naturalistic. Though there are a few rough spots where it sort of loses that for a second before regaining it. So I do see what you're saying with the dialogue to some extent, but I think for the most part it does come across as very human and naturalistic.
I think the brother and sister are like have the best dialogue in the story.
Really?
In my humble opinion,
Okay.
I like their dialogue. I think it fits well for like trying to fit the younger demographic, or at least like the Gen Z esque demographic.
So I
Whereas
just thought of
she's
something.
clearly meant to try and where what was that?
I just thought of something. I guess it's something that I've never actually understood. Is the girl that this random guy, kid, whoever it is giving is bullying? Is that his sister, or does she just randomly disappear and then his sister randomly shows up?
I thought it was Mairead's sister.
No,
Or
I actually never thought of that because later on she does
well,
have a soul
I mean,
sister.
it says if her sister was 19, the boy was clearly around the same age. I initially thought like, oh, like maybe
Oh,
she's bullying her sister. Then why does her sister leave? And maybe it's probably not at all what it is.
maybe I never thought
One of
that it
her
would be her
wait, no,
sister.
I know. But as she was met with the image of one of her several younger sisters, a redhead in this case, with pale ginger features, currently having her pretty hairline ruined by the knuckles of a smug-looking brutish boy. No, that is her sister. So where the hell does she go after that?
I want to find this too. I gotta make sure.
That's in the third big paragraph.
Okay. It's hard to tell what is actually considered big, but I think let's
Then
see here.
fourth
So
paragraph in total.
yeah, I think I
Fourth
found it,
paragraph down, yeah.
and
But
it's
yeah,
actually
that's
it's kind of funny
yeah.
that
Where the hell did Mairead's sister go?
it's kind of funny that this confusion is immediately after uh, a very a part of the story that you specifically read word for word that you loved so much.
Yeah, and then some. Yeah, but like I think, well, here I loved the first two paragraphs. This is the fourth paragraph. It doesn't count.
Yeah,
But like I mean, at least there's consistency in both stories. The
yeah,
sister shows up in the second story. You got to give it that.
that is true. Yeah, actually, yeah, I guess it didn't fully register in my mind that it was her actual sister. I guess I kind of just always saw it as Mayreed seeing one of her younger sisters in this girl.
Like a younger girl that she almost like associates like her younger sister.
Exactly. That's but yeah, it could have
And
it probably is
even
just
then, where the hell did this girl go?
yeah. She just runs off. I don't. It doesn't even. I don't think it says anything about like she goes anywhere or any. It doesn't. Well, let's see
Yeah, it
here.
doesn't say anything at all, which that's fucking to me.
Okay.
That's
Well,
really fucking.
there's a tiny little thing right after it that says so she'd come here for stories, but Mayreed quickly shot herself in between the two, forcing the boy off with a quick shove, giving her sister enough time to mutter thanks and quickly run off behind her. I mean, that's I guess
Yeah.
that's something,
I
but
guess
she just
that's the get rid of the sister sort of thing.
yeah, what did she just disappear into the void that exists behind Mary? Like she just fall off the edge of the planet that exists right there? Like
She exited stage right.
apparently. Oh, so are you expanding your uh, play theory to multiple other stories?
Yeah, with yes, Two Worlds is also connected to Mayread's Misery.
Oh
Confirmed.
man, I would love to hear how you could connect those two stories. That would be wild.
But yeah, anyways, do you have anything else to say before we talk about the mom?
Yes, I do actually. I two more points. Two more points. One kind of long one. So it's so I guess just when you think Mary's learned her lesson about saying her mind in the wrong situation, she almost doubles down on what she was trying to look like before when the sister of that bullying boy comes in. And I think that is very naturalistic and human as well.
I
Where
think it's very human.
yes, where people are sort of when people are pushed into a corner and they're feeling super vulnerable and I guess scared to some extent, they'll double down on the thing that they're being antagonized for or whatever the word would be. It's just such a wonderful thing. It's one of the best examples of indirect detail in this story, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that fully. That's actually one thing that I like. I think I put down as something I loved in the story is how Mairead she doesn't change when the sister shows up because she has no reason to change. It's only after that she's been humiliated twice that she almost considers like the possibility that she could probably say something different in a situation.
Yeah, or just keep her mouth shut entirely.
Yeah.
So that's my second point. So the journey to the atomic wedgie read very cinematically to me in the same very similar vein as as when I've read multiple Chaos Recon stories. They read like movies to me a lot of the time. You know, I lost myself in the flow of the story in the best way possible. It's honestly reading Mairead's misery and getting lost in the story, as I just said. That's the only time that I can honestly recall in all the reading I've done for this podcast as a whole, not just this episode, where I was just present and enjoying rather than analyzing and probing. And it was something that I haven't been able to do that in so long. I just automatically analyze and look deeper because I love finding deeper meanings and stuff. And I think it can be
Hmm.
very easy to lose yourself in analyzing, overanalyzing, pulling meaning from nothing, especially on this show. So, to all you English teachers, you're welcome, and I understand what you're trying to do all along. So, keeping that in mind, why is it important to enjoy media at face value sometimes rather than constantly breaking down and analyzing it all the time?
Think prop. That's an interesting thought experiment almost.
Mm-hmm.
I did.
What was that?
I'd probably.
Oh, okay.
Oh, that was my phone.
Okay.
Apologies.
Okay.
But I think the answer to that would probably be um, there's something enjoyable about blind distractions,
Hmm.
wherein sometimes you just need a story that is well structured and well paced to get your mind to think about something that you want to think about, or like put you in a good mood,
Yeah.
or put you in the mood in our case.
Mm-hmm. It's
But
actually kind of funny as just like as a little side note. I've kind of started the getting turned on by stories has kind of become the second thing that happens, and the first thing is me trying to find deeper meaning in stories now because of how much I've discussed stories on here. But anyway,
but yeah, like I think, but yeah, like I think that would be the purpose. If you don't analyze media, the thing you're supposed to do is enjoy it.
yeah. So I
And if you didn't,
go ahead.
which is why we watch the TV shows we do, which is why we go and see the movies we do.
Yeah, which is why we wedgie by Hans Gutherson.
Mhm.
So um, I'm just
Thank you, Hans.
I'm trying to set the record for my podcast of how many story references I can fit in. um, so I want to actually break down that little thing that you, I guess that kind of throwaway line that you had of it's good to have blind distractions sometimes. I think that blind distractions are one of those things you have to take in extreme moderation. So, to be very frank, for a while, I was entirely filling my time with distractions and not thinking, not checking in with myself, not honestly not being a human. Um, and so you really have to be careful with how much you just lose yourself and escape into another world and things that aren't the real world, no matter how much we wish they would be. Uh, I just want to, just as a caution to any people, just check in with yourself from time to time. See how you're doing.
Of course.
So yeah, so the I guess I'll try and answer the question I proposed to you. It, it did surprise me that thought of such a I don't know if it's a deep question, but such a question like that from a an atomic wedgie. It's I love that we're able to do this. That we're legitimately able to pull actual detail and things that are below the surface from a wedgie scene where the two never would have existed in the same space before in a decade past or 5 years ago or how whenever it really started to pick up. So I I guess sometimes it is important to enjoy media at face value rather than constantly analyzing it because I think it's important to sometimes just be able to enjoy yourself and not really think that hard. Uh, I think a lot of media is supposed to be a sort of vacation for your brain, and if you're going in there and analyzing all this media that you're supposed to be consuming or that you're just enjoying, it's sort of like you're taking your work onto uh, the vacation. And I am speaking primarily about myself here. I hope it doesn't apply to anybody else, but if you are, I understand. So it's really giving your brain a break occasionally, but I, I don't. I think it should be kept in moderation, because critical thinking and uh, trying to find deeper meaning where there might not actually be any, it has been proven to uh, help your, I guess your whatever they call it, like your mental age or whatever. Helps your brain stay younger, whatever the medical terms are for it. Um, it does all kind. It helps prevent dementia and all kinds of stuff. So absolutely, please keep analyzing, breaking things down, but take some time occasionally to just watch a movie or read a story. So now, finally, on to I don't know if I don't know if she is a mom or just an older
It's the
woman.
mom.
Okay,
It's the mom to the two bullies.
yeah. So I'm torn on how I feel about her coming in. I mean,
I dislike it.
on the
I
one
dislike it.
on the one hand, in my opinion, it's too jarring because if people who listen should know, I am all for the grounded, gritty, ultra realism. Yet on the other, it's such a wonderful homage to the classic style of writing where people were really at their freest. I it, I guess this might be a maybe I guess I can't. I was gonna. I guess the way to describe it is sort of a generational divide, even though we're really not very far apart in age. But just the platforms,
we have different tastes in generations we like. So
the people that I guess the platforms that we grew up on. You grew up on DA. I came up on Lucky Fetish and a little bit of Wedgie Girls
yep.
before it. So I I think I don't know how big of a portion it is, but I feel like a portion of it, in my case, is nostalgia playing a factor in my enjoyment in it and increasing my enjoyment with it because it's so reminiscent, but written in a grammatically very well most of the time, and the spelling and all that. It's like a better quality version of what we would have gotten um, back in the day, is what it felt like, uh, partly at least. But I, there's something about this story, and especially this scene, that somehow Tara got that one idea uh, that will get me to stop harping on indirect detail and just enjoy direct detail for once. Even though I know it wasn't written for me, but uh, I guess I like it more than I dislike it. I think it's important to have stories like this, um, rather than just one kind of story where everybody is super realistic and everything is happening as it would exactly on planet Earth. Um, it's having that diversity in the content that we have. I think not only enriches the overall community and provides something for everyone, but I think it's also that we are able to go into all of these different aspects and areas, um, and bring these ideas to light in ways that people might not have thought of before. Or I'm kind of just rambling at this point. That was definitely a very Michael Scott moment. I didn't know where that sentence was going. But
Fair enough.
the essence of what I was meant is there. I think it's important, and I like it more than I dislike it.